So I guess the question is, and we broached this question before, is what do you pay for the greatest of something? What's the ne plus ultra, the creme de la creme version of anything worth, especially in the world of wine? It's a loaded question. For the top Burgundy in the world, you'll pay, well, somebody will pay tens of thousands of dollars. For the top Bordeaux in the world, people will pay thousands of dollars. For the top Napa Valley Cabernet in the world, people will pay thousands of dollars. For the top Rhone wine in the world, it's $1,000. For the top Pinot Noir from California, it's probably $300 or whatever the hell. You see where I'm getting to, right? When you can get the greatest Zinfandel on the planet, and it's under 70 bucks, that's kind of a big deal to me. While it may seem expensive for some people that drink Zinfandel, there's a lot of you out there, including myself, when you do come across a best ever, a ne plus ultra, cat's meow, bam, this is it, you know, epiphanal moment with a wine like this, then that price is cheap. Cheap. Dirt cheap to get that experience, quite honestly. And we were lucky enough to have that experience last week, honestly. So we've been looking forward to these wines, the new 2023 releases from Morgan Twain Peterson's Bedrock Wine Company. Morgan Twain Peterson, the name Peterson might be familiar to you old heads. This is the son of Joel Peterson, founder, winemaker, everything of Ravenswood, who back in the days, in the late 80s, mid 80s into the early 2000s, was one of 2 or 3 seminal individuals who put Zinfandel back on the map. All these great Zinfandel vineyards had been saved in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, by a little something called white Zinfandel. Now it was great. A lot of these great old vineyards did not get pulled out and were planted with Merlot. No, they were saved to make $5 pink white wine. Now, on the good side, the vineyards were saved. On the bad side, you had an entire planet that thought Zinfandel was a $6 pink sweet wine, which is not the case. And Joel, along with Cecil DeLoach, along with Kent Rosenblum, along with Paul Draper at Ridge, put Zinfandel on their backs and said, this is one of the greatest wines in California. This is a California heritage wine, and you should be damn lucky we have these vineyards. Now, the work that they put in the 90s meant that gentlemen like Joel's son, Morgan, could have access to these singular, amazing vineyards, even a generation after. And that's what we have here today. We have one of the singular vineyards in America. This is a Grand Cru site of the highest order. This is the Old Hill Ranch. Originally planted by William McPherson Hill in 1852, it is currently probably the longest running planted vineyard in America. I know there's some stuff happening in Amador, et cetera, in the 1860s, I get that. But I think this is still the longest continuously planted chunk of vineyard in the United States. You know, a vineyard for winemaking, shall I say, not table grapes. In 1898, he sold a chunk of the property off, but kept the best 40 acres for himself. Plus, 13 years prior, in 1885, he had replanted 12 of those acres to what is now the great, unique, unicorn field blend that is Old Hill Ranch. Now, a lot of these vineyards were dominated by Zinfandel in the late 1800s into the early 1900s. Great, as they should be. Zinfandel is the core, the heart, the soul. But what makes a lot of these great old single vineyard, old vine field blends unique and distinctive are the other grapes. And I actually had the pleasure of talking with Morgan yesterday about this wine and really getting to know the vineyard a little better. We're already really familiar with the vineyard. By the way, I sold the 1990 Old Hill on release from Joel. So I have a lot of experience with this site. I've drank numerous bottles from Old Hill Ranch over the last 3 decades plus. And to me, it is arguably the greatest Zinfandel vineyard in America. But talking with Morgan, I got some new insight. Because I was like, so how do you work this out, you know, when you buy grapes from Old Hill Ranch? Because Old Hill Ranch, they make their own wine as well. The Buckland family make beautiful wine from their own vineyards, as well as selling to the likes of Carlisle and to Morgan's father, Joel, still for his Once and Future label. And I'm like, how does this work? Because it's a field blend. So do you get like a corner? And he's like, no. We have a deal in place that we get every 6th row in the vineyard. That way, the field blend aspect of the vineyard, the sanctity of that great field blend concept is intact in the wine. Very critical, very critical. And I was like, oh, you're like smarter than we are. That's really smart. That like makes sense. Okay, got it. And then it was like, so what's the magic? What's the salt and pepper? What makes Old Hill Ranch distinctive? And he's like, well, you know, each great old field blend vineyard in Sonoma and in Napa to a certain extent, there's a couple of them left, have their second great. You know, it's not just the best wide receiver on the team. Who's the number 2, and are they great? And does that contribute to a Super Bowl winning team? And he's like, the secret to Old Hill is that the second grape is Grenache. And he's like, in fact, this, and he didn't say this, but I know along with the Gibson Ranch up in McDowell Valley that Marietta owns, we're talking the oldest Grenache in California, planted 1895. So he said the secret, besides the great Zinfandel, is this now 135, 38-year-old Grenache. And he's like, that's what gives this wine its mojo. And then the tertiary grape, I think, in the vineyard is probably something like Alicante Bouschet. So Zinfandel and Grenache on their own don't make these big blockbuster powerhouse wines. But when you get the Alicante in there and you get those little niblets of Petit Syrah and all these other little bits and pieces, up to 30 different grape varieties in this site, in this wine, that creates Old Hill Ranch mojo. And the fact of the matter is Old Hill Ranch has been making wines this compelling for 40 plus years. Joel started with this site in the 80s. And so this vineyard's been doing it forever. We just get so comfortable with its greatness. I think we really forget how great and singular this site is. So here, the 2023 Old Hill Ranch. 23 is a great vintage. We've been waiting for this vintage for a long time, ever since we knew what the harvest was going to be like based on the beautiful, cool, long, extended hang time. No rain, no disease pressure, not too hot. Go and get your grapes whenever you want them to, kid. And that's what these guys did. So a later harvest, but a later harvest of perfectly balanced, powerful, complex, compelling fruit came in from the Old Hill Ranch. And the results are startling. So I drank a lot of great Zinfandel, my wife. I already mentioned that. I love this grape. But what we have here is next level. This is next level, as it should be. Great vintage, great producer, everything working together to create one of the most compelling Zinfandel-based blends I've ever had. Explosive, it jumps, but it jumps with deep red fruit. This isn't Petit Syrah. This isn't Alicante Bouschet. It's not Syrah. This is not deeply black fruited like you get like from Pagani Ranch in Sonoma Valley, which has a bunch of Petit in it. No, here it's that red. Think of the best Zinfandel and the best Chateauneuf having a baby. You know what I'm saying? Like, you feel the Grenache, you feel the urgency, the crunchiness, but you also feel the fact that this is old vine Grenache, which is its own weight and power and intensity. By the way, this is all just straight in the aromatics. Like, this is, it just bounces out of the glass, this wine. And then all the other grape varieties are these little bits and pieces, these spices, these baking spices, these, like, too many notes. There's old Mourvedre in here, there's there's everything. The structure is incredible. It's impeccable. There's tannin here. The tannin is perfectly framed in the context of the wine. Old Hill was always known for its structure. This site makes structured Zinfandels capable of aging. It's kind of the point. And this wine has that structure, but all that crunchy, deep red fruit is just sitting dead center in the palate. The old viney aspect, the importance and the gravitas of the site is not lost on the palate. Singular, 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 gorgeous wine. All French oak aged, actually, by the way, but only a part of it's new. I think maybe around a third of it or something might be new in this wine. But it can take it. This is incredible stuff. I've driven past this vineyard and I'm always amazed and in awe of it. It's one of the coolest, like vineyard porn, like the old gnarl. You love it. And Old Hill is one of those sites that is really, really remarkable in that sense. The farming and all the work that Will Buckland has put into this site just pays off. just like, think of Heights Martha's Vineyard, or think of Ridge, iconic single vineyard wines in California. This is up there, but at literally a third the price of other wines that may be Cabernet based that exhibit this kind of mojo, this distinctive character. And it's not lost on us. So getting back to it at the start, when I told you this is a deal at this price, this wine is a deal, which, by the way, the 22 vintage of this wine got the highest score ever for a Zinfandel or Zinfandel-based blend from Wine Spectator in its history. And this wine smokes that wine. Straight up. Even Morgan himself said, I've been waiting a decade to make a wine that was good as my dad's 91 or 94 Old Hill. And he's like, with the 23, he's like, man, I friggin' did it. He knows it. The old man tastes it. The old man's like, fuck, Morgan, that's pretty good, dude, And yeah, it's goosebumpy. You can tell when everything falls into place. And these guys don't BS around. They're lovers of Zin. They're proponents of Zin. They're gatekeepers. They're mindful, and they're watching over these vineyards and making sure nothing happens. And when they produce a wine this compelling at this level, it is really something else. Which, oh yeah, by the way, 96 points from Vinous already, one of his high scores of the vintage for Zinfandel. There's going to be more of that coming. This is one of the greatest Zinfandel or Zinfandel-based blends ever made, because technically, I guess it's not Zinfandel, What a wine, my gosh. Morgan, mic drop, bro. You absolutely nailed it. Amazing wine, congratulations.